and welcome to another exciting-ish edition of Top Hat Chat with myself, Street, the Top Hat Gaming Man, and Orb. We are here today to discuss Mario 64.
We are indeed going to discuss Mario 64. I have been playing it quite a lot on stream recently, 3 straight weeks on twitch.tv/Top Hat Chat, where we actually stream from 9 PM every Saturday night. So yes, we've been playing it, and over the weeks I've had quite a horrendous experience, I must say. Not the most enjoyable time period of my life.
Yeah. We'll talk about the objectives of the stream first, because I think that that's relevant. Can you remember what the objectives of the stream were? That first stream, Rich said something. What was it?
Yeah, I'm sure it was something along the lines of, well, I can get 120 stars in one night.
Yeah, and so you gave it a good shot, to be fair. I think you got to about 60. Was that the first time?
68.
68. So that's kind of 120, just not quite. And then we called it a night. It's kind of like, right, it's getting a bit late, and we moved on. And the next week we said again, and you were like, well, I'll get 120 tonight because I'm over halfway there. And can you remember what happened, Orb?
I think you got another 20.
Something like that, yeah.
20, 30.
And we were like, well, we weren't really going to do a third one. We'll just call it here, and we thought, well, we'll give it one more shot. At which point you went, nope, I'm out.
No, we did give it one more shot, and I got another 20.
Yeah, no, but Orb said, nope, I'm out.
Oh, you did, yes.
It's like, no, I'm not doing this. And you got another 20, which left us on...
Round 100.
Yeah, just under 100,
I think it was 98.
Yeah. And during that, you must have played for average 4 hours.
Yeah, I put about 12 hours into the game.
Yeah, and I think we learned some valuable lessons.
Yes, and that lesson is that people who continuously go on about how great Mario 64 is, not was, is, are talking out of their holes, basically. I won't specify, yes, they're mouth holes.
Yes. It's a strange one, because I do like Mario 64, but I feel like it is edging on Goldeneye territory.
It's not edging on Goldeneye territory, it's gone past Goldeneye territory in terms of being dated and, quite frankly, rubbish to play today. It's worse than Goldeneye. I'd play Goldeneye any time over Mario 64 now.
Really?
Yes, it's horrible. It's aged so badly in comparison to the 3D platformers of today. It's horrible.
Yeah, I mean, if you're going from Odyssey to 64...
It's awful. It really is awful.
There are some major
problems. Or even
problems.
Galaxy, or Galaxy 2, or 3D World, or any of the recent ones other than Sunshine.
we don't talk about
It's
Sunshine.
definitely not going that low. We're not dropping that low.
No. Yeah, so, I mean...
That's what I find strange. People openly, regularly criticise how GoldenEye has aged, but you don't hear people often give Mario 64 the same verbal thrashing so much, do you? No. Why could that be?
I don't know. I think maybe it's because they probably haven't revisited it that much.
And they've made the effort to revisit GoldenEye, you think?
Yeah, because I think GoldenEye carries a certain greater degree of nostalgia behind it, because it's like one of the first real super popular multiplayer FPSs.
Yes, but in the same vein, Super Mario 64, was it, or was it just Mario 64?
Mario 64.
Mario 64 was also pioneering in its own right.
Super.
It was the first. Well, it wasn't the first. It was a really good effort at a 3D platformer at the time with a moving camera.
Yeah.
But the main reason I think it carries more nostalgia is because it's a party game at heart. GoldenEye, like its multiplayer aspect is a party game, whereas Mario 64 is a single player, and for people who like to go back and play games, they usually do it with some friends, and the likelihood of you picking a single player game over a multiplayer game when you're doing that is probably a bit smaller.
So your theory is that people look down on GoldenEye because it's more regularly revisited than Mario 64?
Yeah.
That's your theory. And what's your thoughts on this?
I think that's actually a fair point, because everything that Orb said was pretty much right.
Yeah.
You know, it is a party game at heart. It's in the same vein as Mario Kart 64. So
that's not aged too bad, has it?
That hasn't. Ish.
I find Mario Kart 1 and Mario Kart 64 really hard to play nowadays.
I've not played it recently enough to...
Yeah, it's not as fluid. But, I mean, we'll stick to the point of 64
Yeah.
here. There are some major issues. And the major issues that we found... I mean, you were playing here, and I actually played a bit at home as well.
I can name a lot of issues with the game.
Should we go through some of the ones that I can pick up? The controls.
Yes, the controls are horrible in comparison to modern 3D Mario games. They feel really slippery and unresponsive in comparison to what we play with today. Like, I would try and execute a move and just fall off the edge of something and stuff like that. Like, you'd expect it to work, and it's just not very fluid.
The thing is,
it doesn't control very well. It feels slippery.
That's bad comparatively, okay? But Orb, I don't know what you think about this, but like, without comparing it to anything else, the camera system.
Yeah, it blows chunks.
Yeah,
it really does.
It's
really
not great. I mean, it's not particularly intuitive. There are times when you can't see what you're going for at all because there are bits in the way, and it's not very well done.
Well, I think it's kind of funny because Mario 64 or Super Mario 64 even plays on the idea that it's Lakitu following you around with the camera, and that is the game's camera. Is that? And I think in keep with that, it kind of gets caught in the scenery because
it literally
can't move into where you need it to aim.
Yeah.
And it's like, that's cool. I kind of like that you brought Lakitu along for the ride, but it means your camera system sucks. I don't know if that's the reason why, but it's just something funny I noticed.
Yeah, that makes some sense, to be fair.
Outside of that as well, I will say, graphically, I don't think anything really looks wrong with it. I think it still looks quite nice and playable.
I think that holds up better than Goldeneye.
Yeah, it doesn't look ugly. Goldeneye looks alright as well.
Goldeneye looks okay, but it's not.
But I do think Nintendo 64 games do look better when you sit down and play them than what you actually remember them as. Well, for me anyway. If I imagine a 64 game in my head, it looks way worse than when I actually sit down and play one.
Yeah, I mean, I think that one of the things that holds it up a little bit better compared to Goldeneye is the fact that it's supposed to be cartoony. Whereas Goldeneye was supposed to have an element of realism done with terrible polygons and on a system that can't really do it.
I just think shooting 1,000 re-skins of Phil Neville in Goldeneye kind of detracts from its graphical capability.
I just think that also, the reason for me why Mario 64 has aged far worse than Goldeneye is Mario 64, as you said, the broken camera. There's no problem like that in Goldeneye whatsoever. You've just got the same fixed first-person perspective you get in first-person shooters today. Therefore, it's not that much different to what you're actually playing now in terms of first-person shooters, where Mario 64, because it controls horribly, and because the camera angles are horrible, you're getting a far inferior experience to if you was to play 3D World, Odyssey, Galaxy, etc.
Yeah, I mean, I do understand that. I mean,
GoldenEye is closer to a modern first-person shooter than Mario 64 is to a modern, decent 3D platform.
Doesn't GoldenEye insist that you do some form of aiming with the yellow C buttons though? And
I believe so.
That doesn't translate well at all.
The controls don't. Yeah, they don't.
That's just because they have reinvented the way you control first-person shooters today.
Well, this is true.
Another one of the problems, I think. Sorry, just leaning off point. I'm not sure if there's anything else to say about that, but just coming off point a little bit, is that you were playing on what was essentially a brand new controller as well.
Yes.
It's barely been used because it's one of my ones. And a lot of N64 controllers do have a problem with the joysticks becoming very floppy.
Yes, I've experienced that.
Very limp controllers, very limp joysticks. And I think if you were playing on a limp joystick, I think you would have finished a long time before the 3 streams.
What do you mean? Oh, you mean I would have rage quit before that?
Yeah. So kind of there are hardware issues when playing it as well. Obviously we didn't encounter any of those particularly. There was also some issues with glitching.
Was there really?
Not massively, but there was a few times when you almost launched the controller at my head.
Oh yeah, there was a couple.
Because literally you were landing on ledges and it was just like stuttering and
jumping
falling,
up and down and stuff like that,
and falling through, and it just it's not
got a great level of polish to it.
No.
And so yes, I find that rather strange. I understand what it did, and I experienced first person back in 1997 what it did, and it was amazing. But I don't feel, as a gaming experience today, it's not one I would recommend to anyone.
No.
And in that regard, I'd also like to highlight on a recent stream that I completed Super Mario World with every exit in one night.
Yes, you did.
And I thoroughly enjoyed that experience. Like Mario World, that is a game that's aged like a fine wine.
Yeah.
So
Super Mario World is incredible.
It's pretty sad, really, that people are playing Mario 64 now after Mario World. They put out such a crap game after such an amazing game.
But again, you've already
It was
said
amazing at the time, but
it wasn't.
now
It was amazing at the time, and they
Yeah.
were doing the best with what they could.
But it's horrible today, and I just wish more people would try it now and actually admit that to themselves.
Yeah. Is there any other points that you can think of? Or...
Yes, for Nintendo 64 in general.
I didn't realise you'd grown a giant afro.
I have. It's just under the hat, so you can't see it, unfortunately. Nope. But yes, the Nintendo 64 in general, a lot of the games have aged awfully. We've experienced that on stream. However, there are a couple I would like to highlight what are worth playing today.
Okay.
WWF No Mercy.
I get it.
I
It's not
understand.
for
Yeah, it's a good wrestling game. It's a
It's
very
better
good wrestling
than the
game.
wrestling games they put out today.
Yeah, to be fair, the ones
The
they
new
put out
ones are
today are
horrible.
awful.
That's what I'm saying. So they're
But
putting it.
none are better than the WWE run from like, what is it? Here Comes the Pain.
Here
Or,
Comes the Pain
Just
is really
Bring It to Here Comes the Pain.
No
There's
Mercy
like
was
three.
better than those.
I don't think they were.
I thought No
I think
Mercy
the
was
control
a lot better.
scheme was down in those ones.
Yeah.
I think graphics and polish and everything else was down in those ones. I get it. It's more arcadey.
That's what I'm saying. That's what you want to play in a game. You want a game to feel like a game.
Yeah, I think those three PS2 ones do a good job of that.
Yeah.
I just never really grew up with much No Mercy. Actually, my wrestling game experience back in the day was Warzone. Was it Warzone and then Attitude, and there was the WCW ones
they were horrible.
like Mayhem.
Yeah, a lot of those were not great.
So we
I
don't
really
go
like
off
Thunder.
too
The WCW release, I really liked it. Hey, people hate it. I love it.
The other one as well, which I think is amazing and that's aged perfectly, is Lilac Wars as well. It's just a perfect rail shooter. There's nothing wrong with it.
You played Blast Core recently?
I haven't played it recently, no.
Yeah, apparently that still holds up. I would like to try that out.
I don't know if I believe many of these internet lies though, but Lilac Wars is definitely the greatest ever Star Fox game, I would say. I don't think it's even debatable, to be fair.
Not 2?
And that's horrible, isn't it?
Or 2?
Yeah, I'd give it a 6 out of 10.
You think it's worse than 1?
Is that an IGN review? Horrible is 6 out of 10.
I quoted IGN, yes. But yeah, the first one's alright, but Lilac Wars is almost the same game, just with an extra level of polish to it. So yes.
Maybe.
So anyway, we need to finish this off. Mario 64, worse than GoldenEye.
Now you put me on the spot. Do you know, I think I'm going to go, yeah.
Really?
I think I would rather play GoldenEye, and that sounds really weird, but the more I think about it, the more I'm kind of disappointed in how badly it comes across nowadays, because of how much and I think your main point that really hammered it home for me is how good Super Mario World is. Like, how good that one is compared to 64, like the replay value today.
And then what comes after it, like Mario World, that was pretty much the pinnacle of 2D Mario, whereas Mario 64, you got much better 3D Mario games.
Yeah,
down the line,
I agree.
A whole
I think
nother
that's
level of quality.
So surprisingly, I'm kind of agreeing. I don't think I can really lump them together because of their different
So
genres.
we was going to close this video, but I've got one more point thinking about it, which brings it all together in a way. One of the things is, a lot of the people who criticised GoldenEye, they're big into modern first-person shooters. They've got an experience with those. Like, those games have sold ridiculously well. Whereas the modern Mario games, such as Galaxy, Odyssey, they've sold all right. But I do not think they've ever reached the same audience of games like Call of Duty. So I would infer that many people do not quite realise how much the Mario franchise has improved over the years. They're just in the dark regarding that. So they think Mario 64 is still the pinnacle of Mario 3D games.
To be fair, that's not a bad shout. As gaming has
I
evolved,
think it's just a lack of education.
more people go towards that route and they wouldn't necessarily know the difference. I mean, up until fairly recently, I hadn't played a good 3D platformer for a few years. So yeah, I can definitely see the evolution of gaming going more towards kind of the first-person shooter route, which would mean that you wouldn't necessarily know about how good it's got.
Yeah.
What year did Spyro 1 come out?
probably 98.
Yeah.
Around.
97, 98.
96 is when
Yes.
Mario 64 came. So it's only 2 years, and back then 2 years wasn't the greatest length of time, considering on consoles it ran on for and everything. I find Spyro, the first Spyro, way better than Mario 64.
Oh God, yes.
By that point, I was bored of 3D platformers. They oversaturated the market completely. That's
Okay,
like,
but you've got experience. Have you got
chat.
experience with Spyro?
not really. It was
Okay.
they 3D platformers. By that point, it was. Ish don't think so. They've already made all the. They've made Croc. They've made Crash Bandicoot. They've made Banjo. They've made.
is awful.
There was so many bloody 3D platformers. I just didn't want them to keep shoving the same genre in my face, which for some reason these big corporations tend to do, and it really annoys me.
I tell you what, if you go back to Spyro at some point, just give it a go.
But I don't want to go back to it because they've just done exactly the same thing, which
No,
I've
no,
discussed on the
but
channel before. They
it's-
made a Crash trilogy. Mario Odyssey was released. They made A Hat in Time. They released whatever it is, Yuka Bloody Lele. So they made that genre hot again. So, we're going to try and cash in on it again and just make Spyro.
That's not what I said. Go back and play the original Spyro again and compare it to 64,
Okay, I'll do that.
right? And honestly, it is better.
Way better.
It is. It is. And I think that it's worth you doing. I understand your point 100%, but it is a lot better. They got
So it's not
gradually
just
better.
corporate trash like I've made the assumption.
No. I mean, I'm not talking about even going and playing the remaster. You've got Spyro up on the shelf behind
Yeah,
us.
of course I have.
Play it.
Here's another point, just to, again, I think it's quite necessary just at the end. So we're talking about how Spyro is probably better than Mario 64.
Yeah.
Conversely, Goldeneye, whilst being okay, and it's not great to revisit, it's not, I played it recently, it's really not that good. Perfect Dark, which is released a couple of years later by the same studio, with more or less the same engine as Goldeneye, is still fantastically playable, arguably one of the best first-person shooters of all
I'll be
time.
honest, whilst I own Perfect Dark, I've never played it because it was released so late in the Nintendo 64's life cycle. I owned a PlayStation 2 and Dreamcast, but Nintendo 64 was pretty ugly, so it wasn't a very appealing idea to play a GoldenEye looking game when you've got games like Shenmue in your collection by that point.
I mean, Perfect Dark, it is very, very good. I haven't played it recently, so I don't know how it holds up, but it's a good game. Have we got anything else to say about Mario 64 other than the fact that it looks awful? Well, no, it looks okay.
It looks okay.
But not great. The control system is relatively awful. It's glitchy in places, which annoys the hell out of you. It's nowhere near as good as everything that came after
I have
it,
got one more
apart from
point.
Sunshine.
Yeah, a lot of the stars in the game, not all of them, but there's a lot of them which are incredibly dull and boring to procure.
Hidden coins.
And some of the levels are even really bland and horrible. Like,
Yeah.
do you know the ones I'm talking about? The one where the water level goes up and down, that's boring
I
and
hate that
horrible.
level.
The pyramid level, that's crap.
Yeah.
The
Pyramid-
one where you get big and small, that's awful.
I kind of liked that.
The outside of the pyramid level was okay. The inside got really dull.
It feels like the end of the levels at the end are good, the ones at the beginning are good, and all the ones in the middle is full of rubbish.
Haunted House is great.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
still in the good portion.
Yeah.
It's when you get up to when you go upstairs, the levels upstairs
To the
are
top
fun. It's all right on the top level. The top level, the mid level, they're rubbish.
Mid level. So mid level is rubbish.
Yeah.
That's fair. Yeah. So Mario 64. Is it worth revisiting?
So for you, Voss up or Ish don't think so?
Wow.
Is it a Voss up or an Ish don't think so?
I would say it's like a comme si comme ça kind of. I think it's worth revisiting to remind yourself of your humble
So
beginnings.
Voss up or Ish don't think so?
I think that Mario 64. I think it's worth revisiting, but I think there are better ways of spending your time.
Yeah. So, but for me, Mario 64, Ish don't think so. Cheerio. Top Hat Chat is partly funded by the fantastic support we receive on Patreon. So I would like to give thanks to the following people: Michael Keneally and Ben Sainty, both for supporting the Top Hat Trust, and all of our other patrons. Yeah.
Also, a huge thank you to our god tier patron Stuart McDermott. We salute you, sir.
So if anybody else wants to support our fantastic Patreon, then there is a link for you in the description. Ta-ta and farewell.